Anyway, yeah. Anyway, they don't know what they're missing. Uh, we'll stand for the serenity prayer. We'll observe a 2-minute silence, moment silence. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. We'll call somebody to read the how it works. I think we'll call Jim to read the how it works.
My name's Jim, I'm an addict. How it works. If you want what we have to offer and are willing to make an effort to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. These are principles that make our recovery possible. 1, we admitted that we were powerless over God and our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to a care of God as we understood Him. 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, we admitted to God and ourselves, to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, we humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, we made a list of all persons we have harmed and became willing to make an amends to them all. 9, we made a direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for the knowledge of His will and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to addicts and to practice these principles in all our affairs. This sounds like a big order, and we can't do it all at once. We didn't become addicts in one day, so remember, easy does it. There is one thing more than anything else that will defeat us in our recovery. This is an attitude of indifference or intolerance towards spiritual principles. 3 of these that are indispensable are honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. With these, we are well on our way. We feel that our approach to the disease of addiction is completely realistic, for the therapeutic value of one addict helping another is without parallel. We feel that our way is practical for the addict, that the addict can best understand and help other addicts. We believe that the sooner we face our problems within our society in everyday living, just that much faster do we become acceptable, responsible, and productive members of that society. The only way to keep from returning to active addiction is to take the first, is not to take the first drug. You know, this is funny because I have a phobia about reading in front of people. And at the same time, somebody is like, well, when are we going to work the steps? When are we going to? And here I am, like, got to read the steps. If you are like us, you know that 1 is too many and 1,000 never enough. We put great emphasis on this for that we know that when we use drugs in any form or substitute one for another, we release our addiction all over again. Thinking of alcohol as different from other drugs, we cause a great many addicts to relapse. Before we came to NA, many of us viewed alcohol separately, but we cannot afford to be confused about this. Alcohol is not a drug. We are people with the disease of addiction who must abstain from all drugs in order to recover. Thank you.
Read the thought for the day. It's 13th Jan, surrender to win. Help for addicts begin only when we are able to admit complete defeat. Basic text, page 22. Complete defeat. What a concept. That must mean surrender, surrender. To give up absolutely, to quit with no reservations, to put our hands up and quit fighting. Maybe to put our hands at our meetings and admit we are addicts. How do we know we have taken the first step that will allow us to live drug-free? We know because once we have taken that gigantic step, we never have to use again. Just for today, that's it. It's not easy, but it's very simple. We work the first step, we accept that yes, we are addicts. One is too many and thousands never enough. We were proven then to ourselves enough times. We admit that we cannot handle drugs in any form. We admit, we say it out loud if necessary. We have taken the first step at the beginning of our day. For the one day, this admission frees us just for today from the need to live out of our addictions all over again. We surrender to this disease. We give up. We quit. But in quitting, we win. And that's the paradox of the first step. We surrender to win. And by surrendering, we gain a far greater power than we have ever imagined possible. Just for today, I will admit that I am powerless over my addiction and I will surrender to win. Hi friends, I'm Craig and I'm an addict. For this meeting, we'll have Preetham from Bombay chairing it. So we'll ask Preetham to come and chair this meeting.
Good morning, friends. I am Preetham, an addict. With the grace of God and help of this fellowship, I am clean today. Let me tell you something about myself. When I came to this fellowship, and I was told, that you have to go through the steps, there are 12 steps. I said, oh shit, again going through the steps and studying all those things, books and all. I don't want it. I don't want it. It's not for me. And because I hated studies basically, I didn't want to study anything. And seeing the basic text so fat and all those things, I said, no, not again. And it was difficult for me to say that I am an addict at first, to admit also that I am an addict. I had to say, okay, my detoxification is over, everything is over, I am not an addict anymore. Slowly and steadily it so went ahead that realization came to me and I said that I am an addict. I am an addict. And that's the time I said that I have to look into the steps. And it took me time to really, see within myself, reflect and identify with people what was I and how am I and what are the things in me, character defects and all those things. The steps which Narcotics Anonymous has given me is basically for me as an addict to live life with the society, to be a productive member of the society and live in a daily basis on it. There are times when I myself forget that that I have to work my steps, and there are days when my priorities change and I don't know where I'm aligning. I don't make meetings. I forget there are tools which the NA program has given me, and those are times when I come to a meeting after a long time and I meet my friends who turn me back again to step one. This is the way, the fellowship works, and steps, how important it is to me, I know it today. For the first sharing on these steps, I will call Mandar from Bombay to share his experiences on these steps. Thank you. Hello.
Sorry, I just thought I'll be comfortable sitting down. My name is Mandy, Mandar as Preetham says, and I'm an addict. Hello everybody. I thank God and Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous and helping me stay away from drugs today. My clean date begins from 14th May 1990. Probably it was 13th or 12th or maybe even the 14th. I was about to go into a treatment center and I was just thinking, whether I'm going to clean up or not. Because I had tried all possible ways. I had been in Narcotics Anonymous for 6 years. I had picked up 2 tokens, 1-year tokens. The longest I had stayed clean was for 15 months. And also I had 2 months and 3 months here and there. There was one more clean time, about 12.5 months. And the way I was, nothing's working, man, nothing is working. That's what was going on in my mind. Nothing is working out. And when it came to narcotics, man, I've tried this also, it's not working. Then there was one more thing that I learned in NA. The H of Howard, HOW, honesty. And being honest with myself. I asked myself, have I worked the 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous? I could talk about them, I could intellectualize everything. But have I worked the 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous? The answer was no. And what is the Narcotics Anonymous program? Suggested program, a 12-step program. So how the hell can I say that nothing has worked for me? That Narcotics Anonymous hasn't worked for me? I haven't done the 12 steps. So this kept on, going in my mind. I went into a treatment center. It was the monsoons at that time. And the choice was be on the streets or on the treatment center. The deal was better, you see. Anyway, I was in the treatment center. And the thing, I had been in out of those 6 years, 3 years I had been in treatment centers. And I was sick, man. I was sick of being in treatment centers. I've had enough, not again. But anyway, that was the only choice. And one of my friends, he used to call me a rat, king rat. The way I lived in treatment centers. The way I used to get my way, the things I wanted. Best good life, you see. Guys are smoking BDs, I'm smoking cigarettes. All, this sort of thing. They don't have money, I have money. I go out and, all these, how to get away. It was a very sickening life that I was leading. Anyway, when I neared my 4th month, say about 4.5 months, I was just again wondering what the hell, I'm not honest again, I know, I'm doing. But it was just not possible for me to do it because there was no impact from the treatment center. And I was just, I just didn't know what to do and what was happening to me. Then one day there came a news from Bombay that my father had expired. And that was a big jolt to me, a very big jolt to me. Because in my dreams, and sometimes I thought they are fantasies, I thought of having good relationships with my parents, especially my father, whom I had resented a lot, and suddenly it was gone. No father. I just I would feel at times just get one chance to talk to him, just to see his eyes open, just to, And whilst I was coming towards Bombay, there were just 2 things that were coming back at me, 2 words here. One was powerlessness and one was reality. The death was a reality. Powerlessness over this fact, over this situation, that powerlessness was hitting me. And probably that was the beginning, though I was clean, but that was the beginning where I, as NA suggested, a conscious effort on my part to follow the 12-step program, to work it to the best of my ability. The first word of the first step I give, and I give today quite a lot of importance. I admitted, it's not who I am, where I come from, my family background, what I think I am, what I should have been, or portraying another image of myself, in front of people, the newer people that I have been meeting, and the others, the facts that I was hiding about myself. I mean, a different image that I was living with. That's not the I. That is I, an addict, suffering from a disease called addiction, which has two ends: insanity and a painful premature death. And there was a time in '88 when I came very close to that. I had passed out in a coma, and at that time the doctors felt I might or might not make it. I remember my mother saying, "I hope he does not make it. The pain, it will be relief for us, mainly." And I can imagine how sick she got just seeing me and being and living with me. Anyway, that is the I who is suffering from this disease, which has two ends, which is a progressive disease. Today I have learned that in my clean time things have been progressed. My disease aspect of disease. So I have seen the progression, though being clean. So that is the I, which is, not the way I think I am. I, an addict, really. It makes a lot of difference here. I remember where I have come from even today, those days I had. Today I am better off with so many things in life, thank God. But those days when I was on the streets, those days, when I was doing all sorts, the way I was thinking, the way I was feeling, the confusion, all coming out of that, I could go back there also again. I admitted that I was powerless over my addiction. NSS addiction, I began with some other meeting where they specified, but NA has not specified drugs. So what is addiction? I had learned addiction is a disease, suffering from an obsession to use followed by a compulsion, and of course my spiritual bankruptcy. Powerlessness over this obsession, over this compulsion which followed, for me is I cannot handle it on my own. And I tried various ways and means, and I was like a dog chasing his own tail. I can do it this way, that way, all sorts of things. If my parents behave properly, if the family, if the situation, if I get a job, if I get a damn good girl and things like that, I will not use, man. These were the things that came in my mind. If there was nobody, there was God to blame, that He's put me in such things that I'm, using and stuff like that. I had made many attempts to stop using drugs. And the first step told me, you're powerless over this thing, my attempts to stop using, to abstain. I cannot do it on my own. I couldn't controlling drugs. I had lost control over it. Those times, when I used sometimes, when I drank sometimes, no, I couldn't. And all the time when I did it, I was just doing the same thing again and again, beginning with one, ending up doing it, feeling much more miserable than I had felt before. That my life has become unmanageable. I picturize myself as, me driving a car. I wanted to go straight, but it's just going haywire. The steering is in my hand here. It's going here, it's going. Or I'm on a horse, the reins are in my hand, but the horse is not going the way I wanted to go. That was my life, unmanageable. Unmanageability, as I learned, was the self-will run riot. I wanted it this way, I wanted to live this way, I wanted to be happy, I wanted to be respectable. Of course, I wanted to use and control also. And this is the way I wanted to, but it's just going haywire, just going. I just cannot get it back straight and live the way I want to live. Realizing my powerlessness and unmanageability, I also understood that I required help, wherein I came to believe in a power greater than myself that could restore me to sanity. Having been introduced to Narcotics Anonymous itself was a power greater than me, a power outside of me. My own power, my best thinking had brought me here, that's what I identified with. And it did not help me to stay clean, you see. Apart from that, Narcotics Anonymous also mentioned about a clean, respectable, productive life, which I wanted to lead and I wasn't. So it was not just being clean, you see. And in the initial stages, just going into a treatment center and coming out of it, going through my detox, was in a way trying to restore myself to sanity. Today the sanity is different for me. But when I was cleaning up, the way restoration for sanity was something else. As time went by, it was something else. Moving towards just getting a job, Then I started moving towards self-sufficiency. Today I'm moving towards independency. You see, I'm living with my parents. I'm earning well, but I'm not independent. I'm working towards independency. For me, it is continuing the process of restoration to sanity, from where I was and where I was heading and where I could go back and whatever. And in the initial, the meeting room, the basic text was a power outside of me. My sponsor, whatever he used to tell me was a power outside of me and greater than me, because the power inside of me had not helped me to stay clean and move ahead in life. I had many things against my sponsor. He's like, buddy, what he's telling me, all these sort of things. But what was important, what he was saying, the relating part of it. And that helped me, yeah. Coming into the meeting, see, I used to, I've been in NS, and all these fellows have come after me, Because I have what to listen to them, man. You see? Open mind, yeah. Again, the second step is vital, yeah. Keeping an open mind. Again, learning to listen. This was again seeing my powerlessness and my unmanageability. That I told myself, no, yeah. When I'm drowning, I will not, when I ask for help, I won't see whether it's a Chinese hand or an Indian hand or an American hand, any hand, a leper's hand, I'll better clutch onto it to save my life. Now, why the same thing I'm doing now in addiction? I'm trying to save my life. And that helped me, that helped my thinking. As time went by, I started understanding more about the program whilst practicing it, not here, whilst practicing it, learning it, experiencing it. And at various points in my addiction, I was close to the word God, resentful towards the word God. I reached a stage where I thought, oh, that's not our trip, man. No, man, God and stuff like that, no. But I saw the necessity. Because after identifying with other people like me, after hearing them over a period of time, realizing that it could be much more beneficial, to me. And of course, my decision to walk the 12 steps, I started looking out of what is my God. And I read various things, I heard various people sharing about the step 3 and the God of their understanding. But I had to go back right into those school days of mine, when I was interested in science, and God was just a creator, not from the creator of all, that sort of a thing. I said, that's okay, that's a better version, which I believe in. I believe in that everything around me, every moon, universe, everything is made by someone and something, and that is above all, that sort of a thing. I found it easier to call that thing, it, he or she, whatever is my God. The selection of my God, I should say. Not any idol or not following any religious idol or anything like that, but that. Who understands me, And again, it was the same thing, again a decision. I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him. Making a decision. Once again, that, fear. Oh shit, if I have to follow means, my certain things I have to let go, yeah. And I don't want to let go, I want to still live on my own. I want to do my own way. Certain things, some things are still working, I can manipulate, I lie. Easy way out. I like to react with people. But that is one technique I have learned in, relating with people, reacting with them in certain things as far as my behavior is concerned. I don't want to let go. That meant I had to be stuck over here. Again, I had to do there was some time that passed by, and again I was confused. I read the basic text, wherein it said that third step implies action. I went further. I said, one thing I had heard in the fellowship, that God's will is for me to stay clean today. Okay, I understood that part of it. How else could I understand God? One day, I don't know how it happened, but it just came out. What if I am God? What if I am God and that is Mandy? What would my will be for him? Just an imagination. And that day things started clearing up. If I am God I don't want him to be dishonest. I don't want him to be... Things became clearer. I also read, I think it works and all that. Coming out of my self-will, coming out of the process of controlling things and controlling people and situations was in a way doing God's will. Also, as I had known and I had learned, that Narcotics Anonymous is also something given by God. The 12 steps are given by God. So let's move on, man. Let's move on. Let's work the remaining steps. See, maybe this is also God's will. So let's do the steps, and let's see, whilst doing the steps, there are things in my life and other things might clear up. I went to my sponsor, I said, I want to do my 4th step. He said, hold on. Let's look at your step 3. I said, oh God. Again, but I'm practicing no, let's look at it, step 3. And I got really pissed off, And my sponsor means it's like, for me, I think it's willingness to go to any lengths. It takes me 1.5 hours to travel and, go to him and come back another 1.5, 3 hours. Sometimes I wait for another 1 hour and he gives me 15 minutes. Half an hour. And I call that willingness to go to any lengths. I've been doing it and here everybody not a big... Anyway, so again, my sponsor now, isn't my thinking, I should change my sponsor, yeah. Just because this, I have to go back, my decision to take my sponsor. Honesty, open-mindedness. Sponsors, it has helped me so far. I don't want to change sponsor, just because I have not liked one thing he said. I said, okay, what do you think I should do? See, that day you shared with me, he told me about a situation, it had to do with my job, leaving my job and doing some other sort of a thing. Apply your 3rd step there. I said, okay. And come every alternate day. After 15 days, okay, probably this is God's will for you. He told me to continue he said, you think you continue your job, plus do something else, do it. The situation was that. After a few more days, he gave me another situation. He told me to work on it. After 1.5 months, he said, okay, now you do your 4th step. I did it for 1.5 months, working my concept. And it made a lot of difference. It made a lot of difference in understanding, practicing the 3rd step. Moving towards step 4. I'd heard about step 4, I went through the working guide, etc. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of myself. I did it around 3.5 years back. So 2.5 years clean at that time. Around 29 years old. I just imagined, a room is locked up for 29 years. You see? There are a lot of dust, a lot of things, a lot of cobwebs, everything, there is a table, there is a chair, there are lights, there, everything. Everything is in the room and it has not been opened. When I open it, I have to see what is where, table, its leg, cobwebs, how many, all that sort of the thing. I know the room is dirty, but I don't know what exactly is dirty, what exactly is to be cleaned up in the room. That was me, myself, inside of me. This is how I picturize my own self, my own personality. The word searching. I would sit and write sometimes. I would pray. I said, God, I used to sit and write. There were certain things I learned, that made me easier, I remember one thing, it was trying to seek attention. This was my one big problem, wherever I went in life. As I started writing, I looked back, this is happening since my childhood, My trying to seek attention because I was unable to relate, communicate with people, always kept quiet, always the cryful myself, beginning for the inability to relate, expressing, communicating with people. I had begun from there and it's come right up to here. And the ways and means, because I cannot do it directly, what am I doing? My manipulations, a lot of things connected. My fears. Fear was so much a part of me at that time. I went back into my fears. One of the first incidences I remember was I was approximately 4.5 or 5 years old. The terrifying experience I had once was when I went to for admission in a school. My parents took me It was a Jesuit school, and all the priests were wearing white and they were having long beards. And I've never seen things like creatures like, I mean, I'm sorry to say, but I mean, they're not seen something like that. And I was crying, and my parents said, don't cry, you have admission, you won't get admission. What they'll think about you? They'll ask you to wait for 1 more year. You have to go back to KG, and once again, and fear, terrifying. There's those things. Whilst I thought about that, I remember the time, my fear for my father. If I did something wrong, the hammering I got, the caning I got, the marks that were left behind. He was the first person. And during that time, I also learned the resentments started coming in from there. It was related, of course, fear, resentment. Sometimes everything came at the same time. Yeah. I mean, I'm going back through one line, say through a feeling or something like that. I'm reaching somewhere, and I'm finding so many things connected along with. Sometimes, how do I put in so many things? Sometimes I just did not want to, because and he reminded me it's a fearless inventory. There were certain things that were getting exposed about myself. I didn't want anyone to know, man. I said, chalo, I'll hide it. Again, the word fearless. I said, okay, that's enough. Again, have I searched enough? Searching. No, I haven't searched. I must go. Searching. Have I really finished with whatever stuff I had with me? I would have to look back again and again and again and again, and it was irritating at times, but I knew I have to do it. Searchingly and fearfully. There was a time in my 20s and even in my teens, I could see I was victimized. I felt victimized by people. Yeah. I went to a situation at the age of 6, I was victimized. I was sexually abused by a man, say around 30 years. He was 30, I've been 6 years old. And I kept that part a secret of mine till I wrote it down and shared it with my sponsor. That abuse, that sexual abuse, of what happened to me, how I felt, I mean, there were various things happening to me. I did not complain to my parents. I didn't know what to do, but there was something happening inside of me, which I knew was affecting me a lot. There were times, when after going to sleep, I would dream about this guy. When I was walking down the staircase, I would fear that this guy might come here and he might do the same thing and I won't be able to resist. And this happened for years, in that part of my childhood. As I grew up, when I started drinking, when I experienced courage, taking drugs and doing what I wanted, being more manly and things like that, I wanted to hammer him. I wanted to hit him. And I didn't see him after that. That resentment, that anger, that whatever I turned, that shame or whatever, I turned, I was looking out for him. You see? After that, there were times when men came closer to me. What the fuck is he trying, man? Why is that? He's doing it naturally, man. Guys hugging me, coming next to me. But it all began from there. So everything multiplied, and reached a stage, So any man coming closer or hugging me, remember, going into a crowded bus or train, guys, I said, oh fuck, he's trying the same thing, man. Going, that incident years back, it needed a clearance. A lot of things had developed, built during this time. I think I'll go a little faster. So I wrote down all these things. Coming to step 5, I admitted to God, to myself, and to another human being the exact nature of my wrongs. Looking back the way I am, admitted to God, it's quite different. These things are quite different to me. Admitted to God. Abhi God ko kya admit karne ka yaar? He knows everything, man. But it was a process suggested by Narcotics Anonymous, which I did. Taking my inventory, I went through the whole inventory, which was in black and white. After beginning my prayers, I said, God, this is the way. I related it to Him. Again, I had to do the same thing, admitting to myself and then going and doing it with my sponsor, the exact nature of my wrongs. Of course, everything, what I had happened to me, what I had done to others, so many other things. Exact nature of my wrongs. One of the worst things I thought I did in my life, I was ashamed to admit, that I was peddling drugs for around 2 weeks in my life. I was very ashamed to say that, And it was not just going and telling the sponsor, that I had been peddling. It was also to define why, of course, it was my addiction and things like that. But there was one more incident, you see, when I had finished my school. I remember, I was boozing and things like that. I just enjoyed drinking and showing my guts around the place. I started carrying a knife along with me, and I wanted to use the knife. Why? Because it'll be heard, no? People will know, man. They'll start saying, I'll feel someone. I got an opportunity, I used it. I'd stab someone. And again, I was confused, man. Fearing the cops, of course, anxious that Bhagavad will come to know, he'll come and have. And the guilt. Again, why have I done such a thing? Exact nature of my wrongs. Speaking to my sponsor, I saw those shortcomings, my craving to seek attention, to be known to people, people knowing me, fearing me coming on a pedestal. All these things, exact nature, that's what it meant of my wrongs. It was not me doing for what. I mean, so many things connected with it. We got the action in the end to do it. Step 6. We were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. I wondered why there's step 6 and 7. There should have been one, in those times. But there was one word which made all the difference. Entirely ready. I remember just after one of the prominent factors when doing my step 5 and moving towards 6 was my anger coming in the form of sarcasm, hitting back, hitting below the belt at people. Because, like abusing, shouting back, or even fighting was no. I'm a member of Narcotics Anonymous. No, man, no. Hit it with sarcasm, hit him with words, hit him below the belt. I did it and I kept on doing it. Yeah. It was so compulsive and so it was just happening to me. Yeah. Sponsor said, take this first now. Again, entirely, I won't be able to do it again. I mean, these were the thoughts that were coming into me. So, okay, let's take it, practicing step 6, I'll take this up. I found a need. Problem was relating with people. Problem was I wouldn't express my anger in a better way. I humbly asked him to remove the shortcoming. Everything is just for today, huh? It's not forever. I did this process over a period of time, around 2.5 months. I saw it gradually decreasing. Today I look back, in the last 3 years, I do not remember incidents where I have used sarcasm. I leave it place open because I may have used it. But there has been a drastic change as far as this aspect is concerned. Later on, much later on, say around last year, 94, I had a phase in a relationship where I was confused whether it was lust or it was love or it was infatuation and stuff like that. I spoke to my sponsor. He said, step 6 and 7, you don't have sex. What am I to do? Again, the word entirely. You see? So I started working step 6 just to review and to view the relationships. Because that was one factor that was taking me back to the relationship. I was not allowing me to view it in a right way, in a proper way, what exactly is happening, what should I do. Because there were times when I had to patch up or to come back to the relationship, it would end up with sex. Yeah. The feeling just came. Yeah, we had not thrashed out anything, but I ended up in bed. You see? So when I used step 6 and 7, gradually it was over a year that I have abstained from sex, not abstaining from self-indulgence. Of course, I do not go to prostitutes due to various other reasons. And this part has worked. Not that the thoughts are gone. Huh? Everything is very much there. But working steps 6 and 7 helped me, and I reviewed it. I could handle the relationship better. One example, coming to step 8. I made a list of people I had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Again, sit and write all those people you think you have harmed. I wrote about everyone except my family members. I wrote about people whom I have conned for 10 rupees, but I didn't write about my family members. What about your mother? What about your father? Your father's expired. No, but you write. My brother, my sister. I had kept them aside. Huh? Recovery begins at home. I'd heard a long time. Anyway, I made a list of people I had harmed. Everything, right from the people I felt, hurt them, conned them, whatever, everything. And became willing to make amends to them. Because the step 4, I had opened the room, now I know whatever everything is, I have to clean it up. It's not cleaning my blood of the drugs. It's cleaning my guilt up. Guilt, my fears, my anxieties, everything. I just want to be clean from inside, man. It's not just drugs. all these other things also. So I started, the first person I remember was an NA member whom I had taken money from, around 80 rupees. And whenever I used to see that member, I used to look at the figure 80 on his face always. You see? It was like, that kept on, creating some sort of a barrier, and always just see that. But the day I gave him, there was a pinch, because I wasn't earning much. I felt a pinch. I said, no, he won't bother, man. What is 80 rupees to him? But it was important for me to get clean, to remove it from, feel cleaner and better. And I did feel much better. He said, it's no need, man. Let it be. Keep it. You buy something for yourself. I said, no, I want to give it. I told him, and he understood the step 8 and 9. He said, okay, I'll take it. He appreciated me greatly. There was one incident at one station. There was a member from the other fellowship who had started drinking. And it was around 9 years back that I just borrowed a small amount of rupees 25 from him. And I saw him. I said, oh, again, that whenever I thought about that member, I remembered those 25 rupees. You see? And I had the money. I said, oh, he's looking drunk, man. If I give him those 25 rupees, he'll go and drink. Then again, I have to clean up myself. I went towards him. Hi, man. Hey, hi. Hey, you remember you took 25 rupees from me that time? He remembered it. Thanks. Gave it to him. I felt much better. I felt lighter. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible. Wherever possible. Except when to do so would injure them or others. I had a relationship with a woman long back, and it was, I could say, ideal. He was on ship. I knew the score, man. I manipulated. Your husband, he's a bloody bastard. What? Why? Because I want her, no? I want her, no? I got the relation, I manipulated, I used whatever, I got the bread, got everything I wanted from her. Later on, due to whatever we separated, I had to make amends over here. You see? Now, I probably do not, my pronouncer, probably you do not need to speak to her, you can speak to her. But you cannot go to your husband, because he doesn't know about the relationship. If you go and speak to him, what is going to happen? I said, yeah. He might say, oh yeah, you were sleeping with that guy, I didn't know. Your relation might get spoiled, he might ask you, whatever can happen, injure them or others. I cannot make an amend over here. As long as you pray over it, you speak to God. That's it. You cannot go to a husband, but you might break up their home, He doesn't know about, okay, it's happened. Even after that, whatever it's not important. It was important for you to get it out, but it's not possible to make amends over here. So I could not. There are places where I could not make amends. There was one area where I never wanted to make amends, and I told my sponsor, I'm not going to make my amends, going and paying back those peddlers whom I had bummed and conned. You see, I said, I'm not going to go back those fellows whom I've taken stuff from and not paid them. The sponsor started laughing. So, okay, whatever you think best, student. That was one area I ignored. So I had various ways to just go to them, first show them my money, and later then keep a good amount on credit and just go to another peddler, that way. I said, I'm not going to do this amends, something. And even later on I felt I shouldn't. That was one thing I ignored, which was glaring, but I still ignored. Now, having come to know all this about myself and started the process of recovery, coming out of realizing this, coming out of this, knowing what I am, knowing what is in that closed room, table, fan, chair, fear, self-pity, anger, Continue to take personal inventory. And when I was wrong, promptly admitted it. Again, step 6 to step 9. Continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. So that, but it stayed. I like to admit that there were areas, even now, that I have kept things for sometimes as far as relationships are concerned. It has not been as prompt. But wherever I have been prompted, the relationship has improved. You see? It's just taken off after that. It's just continued beautifully. There are areas where I just cannot do it. Across the road with me. So, okay, I see. And I have seen in my daily inventories that whatever the situation, even if injustice has been done to me, I have found out that I would have dealt with it in a better way. Whilst doing so, I have learned better ways and means of relating with people, dealing with situations, just by thinking mostly with the help of step 11, that I sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God
as I understood him, praying only for the knowledge of his will for me and the power to carry that out. Step 3, I was praying. I am praying. Here's the word meditation. Meditation, things like that. But I knew something like keeping my thing cool. Conscious contact was the words that came. That this God that I have selected, communication, relating with this God that I have selected and is the God of my understanding, who is loving, because what if I was God? Friendly, cooperative, and forgiving. And willing to help me out again. So I continued that process of relating and improving the conscious contact of God. My conscious contact. And things were improving. The way I was relating, the patience, the way I was started viewing things. It was like he and me working together. Me coming in a meeting with an open mind. Me going to any member and sharing with an open mind. Trying to sort his will.
Life I knew myself, but now I knew myself at the end of step 11. That's awareness, that insight which is known. The ways and means of handling myself, my life, and trying to manage my life. I assume, having done step 11, I came to step 12, which says that having had a spiritual awakening is just a self-awareness, awareness about myself, moving from my spiritual bankruptcy to say maybe self-awareness, whatever. Coming to a spiritual knowing myself. Whatever I had not known, I had slept or awakened. New things. Having had a spiritual awakening, I tried to carry the message. I have been confused due to treatment centers. Some people say, you have to do it, man. Have to do it. This is the way it is. But what does Narcotics Anonymous say? Carry the message. What is the message? The 12-step program, 12 steps of recovery. That is the message. Come to meetings. Meeting karna mangte hain. You must go to meetings. You kick him out of the house. These are the things, which were happening around me, and even in the meeting, various other things, I asked myself one question, and am I doing it, whatever I was doing all this time, whatever I thought I was doing it. Narcotics Anonymous carry the message, my experience, strength, what happened, what I was like, what happened, and what I like now. That is the message. There could be partly, I don't know, but the full message of Narcotics Anonymous is the 12-step program. I thought that day, that was around 3 years and 2 months after I completed doing the best of my ability, that I thought I am prepared to do 12-step in the real sense. And tried to carry the message, try that word, made a lot of difference, because if I go and share these 10 addicts, all 10 are not going to clean up. Maybe all 10 are going to die. But that process of me doing is I am listening. It makes a great deal of difference, I am sharing and I am listening. It is helping me. I am getting conscious about it. I am redoing my stuff, which I had been doing, to other addicts, and to practice these principles in all our affairs. There was a time when I used to come for meetings, meet NA members, I used to show where I'm practicing the program and stuff like that. But what it means here is practicing this principle in all my affairs is from my home, my place of work, in society, on the street, everywhere. All these principles, making amends and whatever. I have to do it in all the areas of my life. I started doing them. So there were certain areas which, as I said, my family especially, everything, the best part is they got everything the last, the good things of my recovery. I did it everywhere else. Anyway, I've used a lot of time. I thank the convention committee for asking me to share, also the chairperson, and thank you all for a patient hearing.
Thank you, Mandy. We have got another sharer on the same topic. I will call Tom from Hawaii to share on this topic.
and this is very wonderful, and thank you for sharing. That was very beautiful and very concise. Very beautiful. Feel very privileged to be here, have butterflies in my stomach, kind of nervous. I just sit in this room and I look around and I just, you guys have just done so good. I mean, it's just all these little signs around here. It just really touches me very deeply. I'm just really glad to be here at your first convention. About a little over 60 years ago, there was an addict. I like this to speak about addicts. I believe in the disease of addiction. I don't believe in, I believe there's one disease, it's addiction. And a little over 60 years ago, there was people like us that had no place to go. I mean, literally, they did die or they ended up in institutions, mental institutions for the rest of their lives. And what happened is somebody like me and you wandered into this very famous psychologist's office named Carl Jung, and he went to him for help because he was a hopeless addict like you and I, and his life was falling apart. He had lost everything, all that stuff. We know what that feels like. And this psychologist, nobody had been able to help people like us, in other words, and this guy was, wise enough and honest enough to tell him, I got news for you. I got bad news. The bad news is I can't do anything for you. The good news is that I've seen people like you change, that have gone through a profound personality change brought on by a spiritual experience. And that is how the 12 steps were born. Of course we know that, Alcoholics Anonymous was founded on that principle from that day. That started, that energy, that thing started a chain of events to where the 12 steps were brought about, and Alcoholics Anonymous was born. And in 1953, Narcotics Anonymous began. But that's, the way this thing started, and I really believe in that principle that the only way that we can get clean, people like us, I identify myself as an addict when I stood up here. I can't label you or anyone else as an addict, but an addict of my type, the hopeless variety, the only way we've ever found any kind of recovery, and it's like you were saying, to be able to live in the world and not be institutionalized, is to go through this profound personality change that is brought on by a spiritual experience. And I believe that that's what the 12 steps are all about. Anything, of course, that I say is completely my opinion, and I always, even go a little bit further and let you know that that opinion changes, because I'm still working the steps. And what I conceive the steps to be today and what I conceive my spiritual life to be today has changed over the years in this program, and that's from working these 12 steps. In my very early recovery, when I came into recovery, I had nothing. I was 27 years old when I got clean. I found the program when I was about 24 years old. I went to my first meeting in 1968. And bounced in and out for 3 more years. And when I came in out of the 60s, in other words. And I don't know what was going on in India in the 60s, but I'll tell you what was going on in the U.S. in the 60s. There's a lot of LSD, and all the gurus from India were coming to the West, And what happened is I was taking these high doses of LSD, and I was reading about these gurus, and they were talking about this love and this light within. And I wanted that. And I used to take handfuls of LSD and sit on the beach at night and wait to see the light. Well, I saw the light, I'll tell you that. But I came down all the time, I always came down. And I know that when I came in the program, I came from that lifestyle. If I wasn't shooting heroin or shooting cocaine, I thought I was doing something good by just smoking hash and taking LSD for spiritual reasons. So when I came in this program, the God thing didn't scare me. It didn't scare me. I wanted that. I wanted something different. All I knew is that I was taking drugs. I'll tell you the reason I took drugs is because I was separated from life. I didn't take drugs because I was a hippie. I took drugs for the simple fact that the first day my parents dropped me off at nursery school, and I walked into my first day at school, and I was sitting in a room like this with my peers. All of a sudden I knew all of you had it together, and I didn't. I knew every other kid in the classroom knew what the teacher was talking about, and I didn't. And that's addiction. Addiction is separation. Recovery is intimacy. When I'm separated from my higher power, I'm in my addiction. When I'm feeling intimacy with my higher power, I'm in recovery. And you're my barometer. If I feel separated from you, I feel separated from God. If I have intimacy with you, I have intimacy with God. It's just real simple. I keep it real simple that way. The disease of addiction is about separation, about shame, about knowing that I'm not enough. And that's why I use drugs to take away those feelings. Not because I was a hippie in the 60s, but because I was full of shame and separation, and the drugs made me feel okay for a little while. So anyway, when I went to my first meeting and I started hearing people talk about this stuff, I wasn't scared of the God thing. My first few years of recovery, what I thought it was like to be spiritual, and literally I think I've had many lifetimes in India. Because I thought to be spiritual I had to wear a loincloth, and walk around. In my very early recovery, I took vows to go barefoot. I saw this movie, Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon, about the story of St. Francis of Assisi. And in the movie, he went barefooted in the snow. So I had about 2 years clean, and I was on the East Coast in Virginia, where it snows during the winter. I went barefooted all winter because St. Francis did. This is in recovery, I took the vows of celibacy for 2 years. No masturbation, nothing. If I had a wet dream, I knew God got me off, and it was okay. But I was very serious about this stuff. This was my life, living the spiritual life. I wanted it. Today I don't have to do that. Today I don't have to worry. I wouldn't mind doing that, though. I would like to come someday, maybe after I'm retired, maybe I can come to India and live in a cave for a while. It's always been a desire. I think I've done it before in other lifetimes, but anyway, today I don't have to do that to live a spiritual life is what I'm getting at. It's changed somewhat. And I'm learning this through the 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous. My belief is simply like this, that the 12 steps, I believe that the 11th step is the catalyst for recovery. I believe the 11th step is where we get that conscious contact with our higher power. I believe that the first 10 steps set me up for being open to God's guidance. And I believe the 12th step is simply a summary of what just happened if I work the first 11 steps. Having had a spiritual awakening, and we try to carry this message. I even like to even keep it simpler. What is the message? The message is the spiritual awakening. That's what happens after I work the 12 steps. So I believe that in my life, that if I want to keep experiencing this profound personality change, if I want to stay sitting in these rooms and keep growing in this relationship with a higher power, that I have got to, in fact, keep going through the steps. I take recovery very serious. Last night they had an H&I meeting in here. That's been a very big part of my recovery for over 10 years. In the prisons all the time. Carrying this message. That we have found a way up and out. I think that's a very important service thing in Narcotics Anonymous is the prison work. But, for me, every time, I just celebrated, like 24 years clean in October. And I'm going through the steps right now. Thank you. That was all one day at a time, And I just started a new session of the steps. What I'm trying to get across is I haven't gotten to that place yet where I got it together. Maybe it'll happen when I'm 25 years, 30, I don't know. But at this stage, 24 years clean, I do not have it together. It's very important that I come to these meetings. It's very important that I work these 12 steps, And what happens with me is that when I go through the steps, I sponsor a lot of men in America, on the mainland, from the East Coast to the West Coast, and in Hawaii, on all the different islands. And every time I go through the steps with another addict, it's like going through the steps myself. It's very beautiful. I was mentioning to Sunil that I was privileged to be on the committee that wrote the step book, How It Works and Why. And for 2.5 years, I flew to Los Angeles every 4 to 6 weeks. And what that was like is there was a group of us. And to me, I didn't think it was work. It was like being we would start on Friday and we would end on Sunday, and we'd work long hours. And it was like being in a big workshop on the steps all weekend long. It was a beautiful, beautiful experience for me to go through that for 2.5 years. I mean, we just lived and breathed the steps, for those 2.5 years. It was quite a privilege, and I, thank my higher power for letting me participate in that type of service. But so for me, when a newcomer comes in and they go through the steps the first time, it's real obvious. You're kind of pinpointing addiction as well. I used too much, and this, I was powerless over those different drugs and stuff like that. But what's wonderful about Narcotics Anonymous is that our first step does say we're powerless over our addiction. It doesn't say I'm powerless over marijuana, heroin, alcohol, anything else. It says addiction. And for me today, after you go through the steps a few times, you go, well, I always ask my sponsees when they write out the steps, that's how I do it. I have them write step 1. What does that mean to you when it says I'm powerless over my addiction and my life's become unmanageable? What does addiction mean 5 years later? What does it mean after you've been clean for 5 years that I'm powerless over? What is addiction today in your life, For me, it's anything that separates me from you. It's just that simple. That's what I keep. Anything that gets in the way of our intimacy, I'm using as addiction. I'm using to keep me separated. That I've got to look at that. And for me, I've got to do that if I'm going to keep growing. I've got to fine tune and keep this up. And I always ask my sponsees to, because see, step 1 says we're powerless over our addiction, our lives that come unmanageable. And those are very beautiful words. But saying those words is not what moves me on to step 2. When I take taking that is what I ask people to do, and what I try to do myself is when I'm writing out, what do those words mean to me? What does it mean I'm powerless over my addiction? What does it mean that my life's unmanageable? And what does it mean today? Not what it meant 24 years ago, but what does it mean today? And what spiritual principles are in this step? In other words, because see, I believe that I lived by certain principles in my life. And when I was using, it was like lying to you, getting what I could get, me, I come first, cheating, stealing, all that kind of stuff were the principles I lived by. I didn't know how to live any other way. I resented everyone. I judged everyone. I felt separated from everyone. That was what my life consisted of. Those were the principles I lived by. So, in fact, what is step 1 saying to me? What are the principles? Because you know why? When I incorporate those principles in my life, that's how I'm going to change. That's how I change, by starting to work. The 12 steps says, in practicing these principles in all of our affairs. Well, we have right up on the wall here, honesty, open-minded, and willingness. And those we hear about all the time. But I said to myself, there's got to be more principles than that. What are they talking about? So when we wrote the step book this time, if you read How It Works and Why and study that each step, you will find principles named in there. And there might be certain ones that you feel like are appropriate this time for you. To me, surrender is what step 1's about. Surrender at 24 years clean, at 10 days clean, at 1 day clean, at whatever. When I go through the steps, I've got to look at surrender again. If you're going to be on any spiritual path, surrender is absolutely necessary, the way I look at it. You know, that I can't, if I don't get out of the way a little bit more, God can't come in. You know, so I take that principle and I look at it and I apply it to my life today. And I pray to get in touch with that surrender. And I pray, step one's all about, when I walked in these rooms, step one was all about despair and hopelessness. And that's where it left me. Today, my life is wonderful, it's good, but I still, when I go through step one, I try to get in touch with despair and hopelessness again, at some level. Because if I can get to that place where in an area of my life where I don't have it together, and I need to grow, I can feel that hopelessness, and I can surrender then, so I can move on to step two. You know, and every time I work a principle in one step, I believe it goes with me to step two. You know, I believe that surrender goes with me to step two. You know, and I come to believe in a power greater than myself. I really believe, you know, and then surrender comes with me there. And whatever I feel like I've got to work on in step two, I read step two, I study it, what principles are in there. Maybe trust. Maybe I've got to trust this time or something, you know. Trust that, yes, if I surrender, that this higher power will come into my life, you know. So surrender goes with me again. You know, and as I go through the steps, each principle goes with me to the next step, and it gets a little deeper. So hopefully by the time I'm to step 12 and step 11, especially step 11, that there's a really nice surrender. There's a nice trust going on. There's faith that I find in step 3, you know, honesty in step 4, and on and on and on, the way this thing works, you know. And by the time I get there, that these principles have incorporated themselves into my life a little more. And once again, maybe I look and approach life in a little different way. You know, maybe I'm trying to be a little more honest and dishonest. And hopefully I can love a little more, you know. I was talking to Simon outside, and you know, through the time that I've been in this program and working these 12 steps, like I said, I've changed. You know, I actually do have a spiritual teacher, a guru that was actually born in Calcutta, Guruji Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda, who wrote the autobiography of a yogi, and I've followed his technique for many years. And I actually went to his house yesterday. That was very special. But I've practiced many things, but I love what His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, says. He says, you know, his religion is kindness, compassion, and love. You know, if I can learn that a little more kindness, a little more compassion, and a little more love every time I go through the 12 steps, what else can I ask for? You know, what else can I ask for? That's what I want in my life. I know the other way doesn't work. You know, and I've also fulfilled a lot of desires in this program. I have a very wonderful, beautiful marriage to a very wonderful, beautiful woman who is in this program. You know, I couldn't ask for more. I have a 28-year-old daughter who is celebrating 7 years in Narcotics Anonymous this month. I have a 26-year-old son who will be celebrating 4 years this June in Narcotics Anonymous. I'm blessed. You know, I'm blessed. I have my own business. My workers, a lot of them are in recovery. And if they're not in recovery, when they come to me, I think, you know, you're not here to earn money. You're here to learn about the spiritual principles of Narcotics Anonymous. You know? I was telling everybody in the U.S., after I speak, wherever, at a convention and anywhere, as I end, I go namaste to everyone. I have namaste written on my company shirts. You know, I'm so happy to be in the land of namaste now. You know what I mean? I love it, you know. And I loved what Rajneesh said last night. Namaste means N-A, must stay. I love that. Very beautiful. I love that. But my whole life is this. you know. And the neat thing about it, having a wonderful wife, a wonderful family, and a somewhat successful business, what happened with getting that stuff, and not even trying to get it, you know, believe me, that's a grace from working the 12 steps, that's all I can tell you, is that I know that that's not what does it to me. You know, that I have got to have a relationship with a higher power. If I don't, I can't enjoy having a beautiful marriage. You know, I can't enjoy having wonderful children unless I'm clean and I have a God in my life. I really, really feel that, you know, that's the most important thing in my life. And I'll tell you, I went through a lot of stuff. I've been through a lot of stuff in recovery, and I'd like to share with you a little bit how I got clean. Is that I was living on the north shore of Oahu, and like I said, it was in the 60s, and we were just taking lots of drugs and stuff like this, and one day a lady moved in next door to me, and there was like this buzz in the neighborhood that this weird lady had moved in, you know. And what happened is that this lady was guided in meditation to come to this house on the north shore, and what she did is she walked up and she reached above the door and found the key and moved in. That weekend, the real estate company came out because the house was for rent. And they found her in there. And they said, "What are you doing here?" And she said, "God told me to come here." She said, "Can you please have the electricity turned on?" You know? So, anyway, that woman was in the... happened to be 8 years clean in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous at that time. And God did lead her to that house. Because myself and a bunch of other so-called hippies were living on the North Shore then. We were all addicts. And what happened is this woman started a meeting, you know, and I went to it. And that's how I found this thing. And this woman lived her life. That was my first sponsor. I spent 10 years with her. She died in 1978, but with 18 years clean. And what she did, she really did meditate every morning. And she followed her whole life on that guidance, what happened each morning. Whatever God told her to do. She was very, very tuned in, very beautiful woman. What happened, and I always share this story just because I always like to honor her, you know, whenever I share, because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be clean. And there's a whole bunch of people that wouldn't be clean if it wasn't for her. And I like to honor her and share a little bit about her whenever I share. And I had a friend of mine, after that period, I went back to California for about a few months. And at this point, I'd gone to a meeting in 1968, and I bounced in and out, like I said, for 3 more years. Well, I went home to California, and a very good friend of mine who I used to shoot a lot of dope with, was very, I was okay, I thought, because he was my friend, and he was really out there. Well, he had just gotten out of a mental institution, and he couldn't even talk, literally. He just kind of stuttered all the time. And he came to me and he says, "I want to go to Hawaii." And I said, "Well, go to the North Shore. That's where it's happening. That's where, the North Shore is where all the surfing is done. Probably everybody's heard that Hawaii is real big in surfing, and the Bonsai Pipeline and Waimea Bay and all these big waves that they surf. Well, that's the North Shore of Hawaii." So I said, "Go there. That's where everybody's hanging out, And I told him about this woman. I told him about the program, and I showed him a picture of her, and she was very different looking, very long, grayish hair and everything like that. If you saw her, when I was looking at Mother Teresa today, Mother Teresa reminded me of my sponsor, Flowbird, kind of. But anyway, so I showed him a picture of her, and so he offs to Hawaii, and he lands there real late at night, and he hitchhikes out to the North Shore. So he gets out, and he's thinking that Hawaii is this little island you can ride a bicycle around in, and everybody lives in grass shacks. Well, that's not how it is, It's just not the way it is. So he gets out to the North Shore at 1 o'clock in the morning, very late. He falls asleep on the beach, and he wakes up the next morning early, and he's going, "Man, what am I doing? I have no money. Here I am. I have no dope. I'm strung out. What am I going to do? I've really blown it this time." He's just like going, "What have I done?" Okay. Flowbird is a mile up the beach. She's in meditation. God says, "Go to Sunset Point right now." So there's other recovering addicts living in the house. She gets up and says, get the car started, I got to go to the beach. And they lived right across the street from the beach, and they said, well, just walk across the street. There's the beach. She says, no, get the car started. I've got to go to Sunset Point right now. So she gets in the car and she drives down there, and she walks out on the sand and out on the ocean and goes, okay, God, here I am. What do you want? And meantime, my friend Tom had just woken up and is going, what am I doing here, And he looks up, and here's this lady that I'd showed him a picture of. And he's going, so he walks up and he stutters, he can't even talk, he goes, Mama, and she hears my name, Tom or something. She goes, well, you're why I'm here. She says, put your stuff in the car, and she took him home. That was 27 years ago, and he's never been loaded since. And that's how she touched lives. And that's what this program's about to me. What happened with her is that I found out that the only reason I'm on the planet is to carry this message. Like you said, the only reason I'm on the planet is to carry the message of Narcotics Anonymous. That is it. 6 years ago, in my meditation, I was led to Calcutta. I'd never been to India before, and I didn't want to come to Calcutta. I had friends going down south, and I said, wow, I'll go with you, But my meditation said go to Calcutta. And all I knew is I wanted to come here and work with addicts, meet addicts, I didn't even know if NA was here. And I got off the plane, and I went and got a hotel room, and I went to one of the rickshaw drivers, and I said, take me to Mother Teresa's. I wanted to meet Mother Teresa. And I went there, and I said, where are the addicts? And this one nun took me around. Now granted, I just landed in Calcutta at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 1:30, never been here. This is a very big city. I don't know if you know that. Very intense if you just came from America. Very intense, okay? Never been to India before. Didn't know where NA was, didn't know anything. 1:30 in the afternoon I land. I end up at Mother Teresa's. A nun takes me around, shows me the orphanage, shows me the death and dying place, and I say, I want to find the addicts. She didn't know where anything about that was. Somewhere, I guess, she had heard something or knew somebody that worked with alcoholics. And she took me to their house, and it turned out it was June, and her husband runs St. Joseph's, I guess, or something, yeah. And I said, I'm looking for the addicts. And she said, in 1 hour, a meeting is starting across the street. She lived right by Ripon Street. So there I was. I was led to Narcotics Anonymous. 5 hours after I got off the plane almost. And that, I was only here a week. But it touched my life. It changed my life. When I got home, I couldn't talk about it. I'd cry. Because of what you guys are doing here. We have it so easy in America and in Europe. So easy. One of the addicts took me to his house, and I couldn't believe it. I know some of you heard the tape I did in Sydney. It just blew me away. I've wanted to come back ever since then. And I'm here, and I can't believe this is happening. You guys are so beautiful. You've got a gift, and it's growing, it's expanding. It's so wonderful. What these 12 steps do for us are beyond anything we can even imagine. I had nothing when I walked in this program. Keith, a member of Narcotics Anonymous, he was the one that took me to his house. It was no bigger than my bathroom at home, and it had a dirt floor, and he lived there with his wife and the kids. And he told me, I want to work, I want a job, I want to do this, I don't know what to do, what do I do? And what do I say to somebody like that? I didn't know what to say. I just started opening my mouth. All I know is that day he took me to the airport, we talked a lot. I was in the throes of getting very bad dysentery at the time. I had a high fever. I don't know what I said to him, but I just talked, But bottom line, I said, you know what? St. Joseph Treatment Center is an hour from here. Go out there. If you don't have a job, go out there and sit with the addicts and carry the message. I don't know what else to say. All I said is, if you do this, you will be provided for. Well, all I know now is it's 6, 7 years later, and I hear he's still clean. And I hear he's working in New Delhi. Things changed. I had nothing when I came in this program. When I met my wife, I lived in a one-room little house myself. I had nothing. I was the only one in my whole company. I was the tomcat in painting. I painted houses, and I had like 12 years clean. And that's when I started getting involved with World Service then. And I became an RSR, and I went to the World Service Conference. From there, I was on the World H&I Committee for a year. And then I was asked to get on the STEP Committee, writing. And what I did is I just threw myself into service in this program. I didn't have time to think about, was I supposed to marry B? Was I supposed to find a girlfriend? Was I supposed to have my business grow? I didn't even care about that stuff anymore. I just embraced this program. And I worked these steps in my life. And what happened is that things grew. Things have changed because of the 12 steps. And things may change again. All that stuff. I live an hour from my house. There's an active volcano. I might lose everything again. Who knows? But I won't lose my recovery. Our house today is open. It's a program house. It's always got people there. We hold a meeting in our house. We have visitors come through. We have people come to our house to work the steps. It's God's house. It's a beautiful house. But I wouldn't be able to enjoy it if I didn't give it away. I wouldn't be able to enjoy my life if I tried to keep, if I just tried to possess my wife and have our love and just never let anyone in my house because I didn't want you to interfere. I wouldn't be able to enjoy it. My prayer today is, please, God, send someone to interfere in my life. Because if I get too comfortable, I get complacent. I've been through that. When I was 8 years clean, I got married. See, I went through those, I took those vows of celibacy. I really meant it. And for my first 8 years, I was single. I wanted a soulmate. Yeah, I wanted to meet somebody really bad after a while. But once I did meet somebody, slowly but surely, from 8 years clean to 12 years clean, I was going to meetings, I was doing all this stuff. But what happened is all of a sudden, I got married, my business, I had a business, and all of a sudden, God, I better not go to and I also got into marathon running, where you run long distance running marathons, And all of a sudden, I was married, and people would ask, would you sponsor me? And I'd go, yeah, but I said, don't call too late because I go to bed early, or I couldn't go to a meeting one night maybe because I wanted to get laid, Maybe if I stay home I'll get laid, So all that stuff started becoming more important. I didn't realize it. But all of a sudden, at 12 years clean, I went through a divorce. And all of a sudden, I had a hole in my gut so big because of what had happened is that in those few years that I just started, what happened is I would do some step work. I would kind of get bummed out about something, so I'd write out a 4th step, and then I'd go to somebody and give away a 5th step. But that's all I did. I didn't start on step 1 and end up on step 12. I did 4 and 5. And anyway, I just ended up in this place. I got a divorce, my wife left, and I found a big hole in my gut. And that was 12 years clean. And all of a sudden, I was walking into Narcotics Anonymous meetings in Hawaii, where I helped start NA. I went to the first NA meeting in Hawaii. We started NA in Hawaii in 1973. And all of a sudden, I was feeling like I wasn't a part of it, because I had put other things ahead of God without even knowing it. It happened so subtly. So subtly. All of a sudden you get clean, and you're supposed to get clean. And all of a sudden life starts working. It's supposed to get better. That's the idea. But all of a sudden, what happens to a lot of us is and all of a sudden we don't have time for meetings. We don't have time for this. And that started to happen to me. And all I know is at 12 years clean, I went through the steps again, and I started on step 1, and I ended up on step 12. And when I ended up on step 12, it was so profound that my whole life was going one direction, and it was just catapulted and boom, going another direction, and it's never changed since. Like I said, what happened then at 12 years clean is I quit surrendering to my disease, and I surrendered to recovery. And I embraced this program like I wasn't more than a newcomer. My life changed so profoundly that I became a militant on talking about the steps. You know, he said it. This isn't a meeting program. This is a 12-step program. This is about working the steps. We can stay clean so long, probably coming to meetings and hearing about this stuff with a little bit of osmosis. And we can even start living the steps. If you've been going to meetings long enough, all of a sudden you get in an argument with your wife or your friend, and you'll go up and make amends. You hear about that in the meetings. We make amends. So all of a sudden you're doing that kind of stuff. And you're just kind of living the steps. But living the steps is not the same as working the steps. You know, for me. And I want to keep saying that because I don't want to be up here going, rah, rah, rah. You know, but this is what worked for me. I'm talking from experience. You know, I got there and I found a hole in my gut at 12 years clean. You know, and I went through the steps again, and since that day I just am addicted to going through the steps. You know, I go through the steps on certain areas of my life now. I'm going through the steps on a very profound thing right now, the session I'm going through right now. That I haven't really shared too many people with, but I'll just tell you, and it may not make sense to you, but what I'm going through the steps on right now is what I have to do to complete this incarnation and prepare for my next one. That's heavy stuff. You know, I used to say, I don't want to come back. I don't want to go through this again on this planet, but now I do. You know, I want to come back and keep helping till everyone wakes up. You know, that's my vow today. That's what I'm working the steps on. That's pretty deep stuff, you know, and the steps do that. This stuff, we're not limited in this program. You know, this program's, if this program was only about just staying clean, I would not still be here. I would not still be here. But this program is about love. It's about joy. It's about this relationship with God. It's about the spiritual awakening. You know, I believe that as I work these first, I believe steps 1, 2, and 3 are the foundations. They're about the surrender. They're about really coming to believe and having that. I believe for me that I get in touch with surrender, trust, and faith in the first 3 steps. And then I believe what happens is I go through steps 4 through 10, and they're the action steps. I write that moral inventory. For me, when I'm working with a sponsee that's new, I say, write your emotional life story. Your emotional life story. Not necessarily the war stories, but your emotions behind them, the feelings, like our friend from Bombay was the sexual abuse. What did that feel like? He carried that hurt with him the whole time. He carried that resentment. That's what we do. We go through these things and we carry that pain, we carry that resentment with us our whole life until we learn how to dump it. So we want our emotional life story down there. It's the inventory of what our life has been like. You know, I tell people, if you have trouble getting writing, I want you write down the worst thing that you ever did. The thing that you know you would never tell anyone. That's a good way to unlock the flow of getting started. We have to get honest. You know, we have to do it, or we die. You know, and then when we go to our sponsor with step 5, you know, we tell all this, you know, we dump this stuff. And then as I'm listening, when I listen to a 5th step with somebody I'm listening to a 5th step with, I always tell them ahead of time, I'm going to have a pencil and paper. So don't, you know, I don't want you to think that I'm writing down your secrets to go tell someone. What I'm doing is I'm starting your character defect list. And I'm starting your list of amends. Because that's where the amends list and the character defects come from, is from what we get in touch with in the 5th step. So as they leave my house, I give them a list. There's the beginning of your amends, there's the beginning of your character defects, and we can elaborate on this now. And I tell them for step 6, I want you to because see, another word for character defects that I just love that's in the step book, if you read step 6 in the step book, is survival skills. And that really defines it in a different way. Because what that says is that the reason I was living in these character defects is for my own survival. I was so scared, so shameful, so full of fear of life that I needed these to protect myself. They were my armor. They distracted me. The character defects are no different than my using. Using is a character defect. It's one of the character defects. When drugs and alcohol, when the obsession to use drugs was removed from my life, that was like one of the first character defects that got removed from my life. And then as I go on, the rest have to, because that was an armor. They're all an armor. And if you really look at a lot of the character defects, they're God-given instincts. There's nothing wrong with lust. Any long-term marriage, get married and stay married 20, 25 years. If you don't have a little lust in your marriage, it's going to be dead. There's nothing wrong with a little. You know what I mean? There's a boundary. But if you're walking around in your neighbor's backyard looking in the window, jacking off, something's gone over. Lust has gone over the invisible line somewhere. You know what I mean? I don't think that's what they meant by you know what I mean? So you need to find out where the balance is. Where have I gone over the invisible line? Now, do I still need this survival skill in my life? That's what I ask my sponsees to answer these certain questions. Where do I remember this character defect first starting in my life? Go back. Where do I remember this first happening? And then ask yourself, what was I getting out of it?